Yo, what is up? What is up? You are listening to the NBA Big Board Podcast, and this is your host, Rafael Barlowe, with my co-host, Leif Thulin, aka The Grinder. And in this episode, we're going to discuss which teams are most likely to make a trade on draft night. I'm a Blazers fan. There are plenty of rumors that my Blazers will be looking to move the number 7 pick. Stay tuned. Shout out to each and every person that has made the NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. I know I really appreciate it, especially at this time of year. This is what I would call go time, go season. This is the time that everybody is really paying attention to the draft. So thank you for each and every person that has chosen the NBA Big Board Podcast as your source for all draft news. All right, Leif, how's it going, man? How's everything? Are you exhausted? I know you are the new play-by-play voice for a minor league baseball team. Is that correct?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to still have my voice, and it was fun. I'm the play-by-play voice for the Ogden Raptors. Got the hat right here. It was a blast. That's what I want to do down the road. But I'm excited to talk some draft as well.
And the Ogden Raptors, are they single A, double A? Which level are they?
They were single A. They're now in the Pioneer League, which is like an MLB affiliate.
Okay. So yeah, when I was younger, I was a huge baseball fan, and I'm actually at home at my parents' house in Omaha, Nebraska. So I was a Omaha Royals fan. I don't even think they're the Omaha Royals anymore. I think they're like the Golden Spikes, and they were Triple A. But I haven't paid attention to baseball in so long, so I don't even keep up with it. But let's get to what we're talking about in this episode. There are rumblings, and I'm a Blazers fan, right? So there are rumblings that the Portland Trail Blazers are possibly looking to trade their number 7 pick for a veteran. I know the Pistons are the team that I keep hearing the most. Now, do you think, and this is just based off of your opinion, do you feel like the number 7 pick in a package for Jerami Grant, do you think that is too much for Portland to give up?
No, I'd do it. If you're trying to win and you're trying to win with your superstar player in Damian Lillard, I think you try to package a 7 pick who may pan out to be really good, but you don't know. And the time frame is more sensitive and Dame's not old, but he's older. And so I'd take the established player in Jerami Grant, because how often does the 7th pick become better than what Jerami Grant is? And I think AJ Griffin is a really good 7th pick for Portland. That's who I've mocked to Portland, but I would take Jerami Grant over AJ Griffin in a 3-year time span, which is when the Blazers are most likely to compete.
Yeah, Dame will be 32 at the start of the season. So, I mean, the time is now. But on one hand, and I know it's a new front office. I know it's not the same guys that were there a couple of years ago, but I'm still mad about the Norm Powell for Gary Trent deal that turned into, went from Gary Trent to Norm Powell to like Justice Winslow, Eric Bledsoe, and Keon Johnson. And I mean, I just think we should have kept Gary Trent. I mean, he signed for like $40 million less than what Powell was re-signed for. And I don't even think they had Powell for a full year after they made the trade. So hopefully they don't get dominated or taken advantage of in another trade. Now, as far as like, let's say Blazers or the number 7 pick for Jerami Grant, what other pieces do you think would be in that package?
That's an interesting one, because it depends how the Pistons want to build. Obviously, Cade Cunningham is the face of that franchise, and it's what they're asking for. I think you've got to, because they're giving up the best player in the trade. You got to kind of adhere to what the Pistons would like. I could see one of those youthful pieces that the Blazers have developed a little bit in the tanking season and acquired in that trade. Maybe they'd be interested in Keon Johnson, who's got a lot of potential. Maybe they want Nasir Little. I'm not sure what the Pistons would want, but I don't think just the 7th pick and maybe some throw-ins are going to do it. I think they need to give up an established player, because Jerami Grant's a very high-performing player.
Yeah, so based off of my mock draft, that would give the Pistons Shaedon Sharpe and AJ Griffin. Do you think a core of Cade Cunningham, Shaedon Sharpe, AJ Griffin and I guess Sadiq Bey, or do you think like if they end up with like the 7th pick, they would go for somebody like Jalen Duran or maybe even like a Mark Williams?
I like the idea of taking the wings. I do think they'd be really intrigued by the prospect of Jalen Duren because he's a far better rim protector than Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart's kind of a throwback skilled big on the interior, but he's not as good a defender. And I think Jalen Duren offers a huge upside there. But I think between Matherin, AJ Griffin, and a few other guys, Duren would have to really wow them in some workouts to pass up those 2 guards who could help immediately with the playmaking ability of Cade Cunningham.
Now, do you think that there are any other teams that Portland would be interested in making a trade for? I mean, Grant is the name that keeps coming up.
I think that's the main name because the Pistons aren't there to compete yet. And so I think when there's a good player with that can command that type of respect, I think that's a good team to trade with. There's a few other there's an archetype of player they need. They need a 3-and-D player, and Jerami Grant's about the best of that is available. My mind went to like Robert Covington again, but they've already had him, and I don't think the Clippers are going to give him up. And considering they just made that trade, there's some players that I think are less easily traded for that aren't even as good as Jerami Grant, but Jerami Grant's situation makes him more available.
And do you have like the players that you mentioned that probably aren't as good that could be available?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to think a little bit further.
See, for me as a Blazers fan, I know, there's a urgency to win now, but it's such a risk. I mean, I know everything Dame is saying is that he wants to be there, and I actually believe him. I actually believe him when he says he wants to be in the Pacific Northwest. But all right, let's say you make a trade for Grant. God forbid something happens. Grant is injured like he is last year. And Dame will be 33 the year after that. Is he going to want to continue to rebuild, or is he going to say, you know what, I've had enough. I'm ready to go. Now you've given up your 7th pick and you have Grant. And now, I mean, you're still in rebuild mode. So there's a part of me that kind of wants to play it safe, but as a small market team, you have a superstar that wants to be there. You kind of have to do what he wants, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, it's still a risk. But if it doesn't work out, now you gave up what could end up being like a really good player. I mean, I could just think off the top of my head of some bad trades that were made. I mean, one of the most obvious ones, as far as like trading a pick that stands out, was the Clippers, the Baron Davis trade to Cleveland. The pick ended up being Kyrie, and I think that's just a move that kind of comes to mind. Now, is there any other teams that you think will make a move on draft night? Talking about teams that are like at the top half of the NBA draft.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I think one is in a very similar situation to the Blazers. They don't have a superstar in Damian Lillard, but I think they'll be disappointed in the way their draft went is the Indiana Pacers. I think they really were hoping to get a franchise-altering talent, and we've kind of decided that the top 4 are the ones that have the potential to do so. Shaedon Sharpe becomes interesting because he's got such high talent, but like you've tweeted out, like you said, that he could burn you. He could burn you if he doesn't pan out. And they're at 6, so they likely don't even get him. So I could see them trying to trade into the top 4, and they have pieces to trade, such as Malcolm Brogdon and Miles Turner. What do you think of that?
I don't even know. I kind of am just curious to see what the Pacers' next move is. They do have 2 veterans, like you said, in Brogdon and Turner, that would be valuable trade chips. But I don't know. Are they all in on rebuilding? Are they trying to make this a quick rebuild? I have no idea. But when we return, we'll kind of go in more in depth about the Pacers and talk a little bit about Shaedon Sharpe. But I want to talk to you about Rock Auto. Now, with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local chain and auto parts store to stock all the parts that your car needs. So it's kind of pointless for you to endure the intimidating questioning, like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And no need to wait for the person behind the counter to order parts on their computer, when all you have to do is use your own phone or your own computer. You can save time and money when you use Rock Auto. There's no need to spend 30, 50, and even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership. For example, the Honda Odyssey. I don't know why I'm talking about a Honda Odyssey, but the fuel pump on a Honda Odyssey is $353 from a chain store. But if you get it from Rock Auto, it is only $216. And Rock Auto is a family business that is serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything that you can need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all their parts available for your car, truck. If you write Locked On in their How Did You Hear Us box, they'll know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts that your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, once again, I am Rafael Barlowe. This is Leif Thulin, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze here, discussing some teams that could potentially make some trades on draft night. And before we left off, we talked about the Indiana Pacers. Now, I've seen that the Pacers could be arranged to select Shaedon Sharpe, and I wanted to talk about Shaedon Sharpe. So I tweeted a few days ago, and it kind of went viral, kind of made me famous in Kentucky. And I spoke to multiple scouts about Shaedon Sharpe, and one scout had mentioned that he doesn't really like going to pro days, but you have to go. And in the case of Shaedon Sharpe, it was an opportunity to see him live, and basically his athleticism, size, strength, it all stood out to him. But there were a couple of other scouts that, while nobody's denying the talent, they were a little skeptical because he has a very small sample size. They were saying that he didn't practice that much at Kentucky. They're wondering why he didn't play at Kentucky, and they just felt like he's getting some bad advice. But none of this is really like, I mean, nobody's kind of saying it's a poor reflection of Sharpe. It's just more so questions about who's advising him. Are they trying to hide something? And it's putting teams in this really crazy predicament, in a sense, is that they're going to have to draft a guy with a very, very small sample size. So with all that being said, the Pacers are one of the teams that could potentially be in range. Now, if you were in charge of the Pacers, do you gamble on Shaedon Sharpe, or do you and go all in on a rebuild, or do you try to get someone like, let's say, Keegan Murray, who is more likely to help you win now?
I think I'd gamble on Shaedon Sharpe. I don't know if that's what they'd do, but what I would do is gamble on Shaedon Sharpe because he's got the potential to make your team viable for years and years if he hits his ceiling. We talked about how many players hit superstardom, and I think our immediate reaction after the lottery were, oh, 2 or 3. Well, I think he could be one of those 2 or 3 if he hits. Obviously, there's a risk associated, but if you take a Keegan Murray, I think you're stuck in purgatory if you're the Pacers, because you still have to likely move one of Brogdon or Turner, and now you take a forward that's 22. And I don't have anything against age, but you just have a harder time reaching your ceiling taking a guy like Murray and trading one of Brogdon or Turner. And so now your roster still isn't as good as it was, because at least this year, because Murray's unlikely to be better than Turner or Brogdon immediately or in the next few years, because Brogdon wasn't basically an all-star a few years ago before he got hurt, and Miles Turner really improved. So I would take the swing. I'm not sure that's what Rick Carlisle type teams will do. They like older prospects. They like safety. I love Keegan Murray, but I think you have to try and swing for the fences unless there's something that they saw specifically in pro days that I was unable to see that really deterred them from taking Shaedon Sharpe.
Yeah, I was at his pro day. It was okay. I mean, you saw, like I said, the size, the athleticism. I mean, but you're not going to see a pro day where the agency, and in his case, he didn't even have an agent running it, but you're not going to see a pro day that really challenges a player. It's just going to highlight their strengths. Maybe every once in a while you see a guy like, for example, Dyson Daniels. One of the concerns about him was the shooting, and he shot very well. But for the most part, they're going to keep it simple and keep it controlled. Now, here's my beef or issue with the whole draft process, right? And So you got Keegan Murray, who's one of the best players in college basketball this season. I think it was like 22 points, maybe like 8 rebounds, averaged a block, a steal, shot nearly 40% from three. And even though he's not considered like this great athlete, the majority of his points and possessions this year came in transition, right? But for whatever reasons, because we like the unknown, Shaedon Sharpe is considered to have higher upside. He's considered to be the better prospect. He may even get drafted ahead of him, despite doing absolutely nothing. Now, what top 5 high school recruit doesn't look exceptional playing against their peers? And I'm skeptical because he didn't practice, he didn't play. And it's almost like, all right, and I get it. You want to protect his draft stock. If he is projected to be a top 5 pick or whatever, and if you're his agency or who's ever representing him, you want to put all the pressure on the teams except him. But I just think it's weird that, and I mean, this is not like I'm disagreeing with what you're saying, but and I think it's pretty common. I just think it's weird that a team will take Sharpe over Keegan Murray or Johnny Davis, or maybe even there's a possibility he could go ahead of Jaden Ivey with very little sample size. And I don't know, that just kind of baffles me.
And that's why I would like the Pacers to trade their pick. And then when we talked about the biggest losers of the draft, that was the first team that came to my mind.
Over Detroit? Because I mean, Detroit had the 3rd worst record, and they end up falling to 5. So I think, I mean, they both lost.
But they have their guy, and that's to me the thing is if you're trying to get out of the lottery and do so whether quickly or in the long term, you need to have your franchise piece, and they were the number 1 pick last year. So I know you can't really be like, oh well, this draft, like record wise, they were more screwed, for lack of a better term, than the Pacers, but the Pacers needed their guy more than the Pistons did. So I felt like they were more unfortunate in the way that the ping pong bells fell.
Well, according to Draft Twitter, the Pacers have their guy in Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton I think he's good, but I'm almost at the point where I feel like people are overrating him.
I'm with you. I love Halliburton. I had him number 6 on my board in his draft class, and he's only gotten better, but that's a stretch in my opinion.
So you're saying if you're the Pacers, you trade the pick. Now, do you have any trades in mind?
I think you try to do something similar to what the Blazers do, but you can't get a Jerami Grant. You try to get a wing defender, or you try to move up in the trade. And you say maybe the Kings, you can get 4 from 6 and give them Brogdon or Turner, and you try to get a full rebuild.
So you reuniting Turner and Sabonis again in Sacramento?
Maybe it's Brogdon then.
Then you'd add another guard. So it's like it'll be very, very weird. Yeah, I don't know a trade for Indiana that just comes to mind that makes the most sense, but I think it's simply because we don't know the direction. You know, you look at Rick Carlisle and you say, all right, I know he did not sign up for a full rebuild. And then you look and say, okay, well, I could see them looking to maybe add a veteran piece around what they already have. So it's kind of tough. Right, what about the Houston Rockets? Now, I don't know how true it is. I did see a rumor, of course it's on Twitter, so you know it could just be anybody talking, that they may be even interested in moving the 3rd pick. What do you think about that?
I'd be pretty flabbergasted if that were to happen. I think that they have a very, very good chance to get Paolo Banchero, who I think very easily could have the highest ceiling of anyone in this draft.
Yes, sir.
And
I agree.
I don't think that they're not the winners of the draft. I wouldn't say like, oh, they won the draft, because I think that was Orlando. They choose their own destiny. But likely the way the draft falls, Orlando takes either Jabari or Chet. The other one goes 2. And Houston still gets the guy that makes the most sense for their roster. And so I'd be pretty stunned if they were to trade the 3rd pick, where they can get the guy with probably the most potential in the draft and get the guy that I think makes the most sense for their roster. That rarely happens when you lose out on the lottery, but I think they won. And so I'd be pretty stunned if that were to happen.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. I mean, I believe that Banchero is going to end up in Houston, which I would have taken him number 1 if the Rockets had the number 1 pick. So I think they're in a good situation. I can't see them really making a move. They also have the luxury of not being pressured to try to win now. I think their GM, Rafael, even though his name is spelled similar to mine, but he's pronounced Rafael. His parents left out a vowel or syllable. He made the comment like you can't judge the James Harden trade. I don't know if it was until like 2026 or 2028, maybe even 2030. So they have the luxury of being patient and not having to wait. So I can't see them making a trade at all. Even though I did hear someone tell me that there's a chance they may look at Jaden Ivey at number 3, which if they look at Ivy at number 3, that means Kevin Porter Jr. is out, which I mean, it's probably not a better bang for your buck than him because they're paying him a little bit of nothing and they gave up a little bit of nothing to actually get him. But there's some other concerns there. All right, when we return, I'll ask Leif about some other teams that he believes will make some trades on draft day or even before the draft. But next, I want to talk to you about Truebill. And did you know why free trials renew without your consent? That's because it is a business scam to get you. I know I've been got before with these scams. So don't let the greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is a new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. And on the average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. And that's just because these companies make these subscriptions hard to cancel. Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your account and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. There's a guy named Matthew B, who says, in a matter of seconds, I saved $660 for the year on my DirecTV bill. He saved $120 a year on his Sirius XM bill and $840 on car insurance. So Truebill is out here to help you save money. So don't fall for the subscription scam. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now, truebill.com/lockedonnba, which will save you money, especially if your ex is still using your Netflix account, which is what one woman found out. All right. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe, Leif Thulin. Now I'm giving Leif the floor. You are the general manager of whatever team you choose to be. What are some draft day trades that you would like to see happen?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think the Knicks are another team that come to my mind, and maybe that's just because Draft Twitter's got a lot of Knicks fanatics on there.
Oh my gosh, they're crazy.
They've got
they're all over the world too, you know.
Yeah, they got the mecca of basketball working for them. They got the 11th pick. I really like the pick that I have for them, Blake Wesley. Who knows if that actually ends up becoming the pick? But I would consider moving up, and you don't even need to get into the top 4. The Knicks have some players. I would be curious to see if the Knicks can try to get Jalen Duren. I think they've not been too subtle about interest in Jalen Duren. And even if they get up to 7, let's say if they were to trade with your Blazers, I don't know exactly what they would do, but if they can get up to that, they're about 7, 8. There's a 4 or 5 players that I think could really help the Knicks franchise. And I think moving from 11 to 8 is a subtle move that may really help them out. And I would look at Duren first for the Knicks. But if you could get a Mathurin, a Keegan Murray, a AJ Griffin in that range, I think that the Knicks are really winning the draft.
That's kind of like a perfect segue because I do think if the Blazers can't get Jerami Grant, I think Julius Randle could be an option. And I remember just 2 years ago, I was on Knicks Fan TV. Shout out to CP at Knicks Fans TV. And I had mentioned that I wouldn't mind the Blazers having Julius Randle. And so it was funny because that was during the COVID summer and Knicks fans absolutely hated Julius Randle, couldn't stand him. And I remember making the comment on the show and because this show is a live show and Knicks fans were like, they will come help him pack his bags to go to Portland. Then 2021 happens. Julius Randle's an all-star. He has this great year. Knicks fans love him. They forgot about everything they said. And then this past season, it's kind of back to where it was at 2020. So I could see Randle being moved. I mean, I guess there were some comments that his wife made on social media that about the Knicks fans, in a sense, about how critical they were. Knicks fans just seem to be off Randle, and I don't know how you can bring him back in that hostile environment, because they want Obi. They want to see Obi Toppin get his minutes. So there is a chance that it could be Julius Randle for number 7. But when you said about Jalen Duran, and here's a quote that I heard from a scout on an NBA team. He said that he believes that if Mark Williams' agency can get him in a workout with Jalen Duran, Mark Williams would outplay Duran, and he could possibly pass him up. So I said that to say this, is that on my latest mock, I think the Knicks, who are probably in need of defense and probably don't want to pay Mitchell Robinson, I think the Knicks could actually take Mark Williams at number 11. And if you trade Mark Williams at number 11 and you move Randle for the 7th pick, then you could end up with, let's say a Mark Williams, and reuniting Mark Williams and AJ Griffin. And if I'm not mistaken, and I think I'm right, AJ Griffin is a CAA guy. And that whole tie, CAA, Kentucky / Knicks. There's like a circle there, even though, I know that AJ Griffin went to Duke. What are your thoughts on that happening?
I think AJ's from New York as well. So that one fits well. I think that the gap between Mark Williams and Jalen Duren is ever so slight. I think the potential is what you bank on for Duren. And so that's why I have him slightly higher on my board, but I have Duren at 9 and Williams at 12. So it's very slight for me as well. I think that the difference between the 3rd best center and Mark Williams, if he's number 2, excluding Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren is in a different tier, but it is so much further apart between whoever you think is the 3rd best center, Christian Koloko, Ismail Kamagate, even Jalen Williams. I love Jalen Williams. That they're far behind, but I do like that pick. I think that the Knicks would be very fortunate to make that pick, and I think that would help their rebuild, because I think they're stuck in purgatory as well. Julius Randle can be an all-star, but he's not an all-NBA guy, and he can't lead you to the promised land, I don't think, of where Knicks fans want to go. They don't want to be in the playoffs. They want to win. And I think you want to develop their talent, and I think this is the best way for them to address those needs, especially without paying Mitchell Robinson an exorbitant amount of money that I don't think that Knicks fans would like to do. And I don't think the Knicks general managers would do that. AJ Griffin and Mark Williams would be quite a haul for the Knicks, especially if they're going to begin the rebuild and trade Julius Randle.
Yeah, I think that's a strong possibility, and I'm definitely going to tweet it out, and I'm sure if I tag you, be prepared to turn your @ mentions off, because Knicks fans either way are going to be either all on the trade or they're going to absolutely hate it. But I think it's a real possibility, because again, for some reason, I just don't see Julius Randle starting the season in New York. I think the fans are ready for Obi Toppin. And if they can get, like you said, AJ Griffin and Mark Williams, I think that will add a little bit of buzz and excitement, even though like the Knicks could have me, you, Richard Stayman, Sam Ferris, and David Locke as their starting 5, and I think they'll still sell out the Garden. So that just shows how passionate that fan base is. All right, was there any other trades that you thought would make sense?
That team could shoot the basketball. I just want to let you know that.
Not me, not me. I'm the distributor there.
All right, I'll be the 2 guard. We got. I would say the Spurs. I think they lack a clear identity of what they're gonna do, and they're kind of in a pick where the 9 pick is a good pick, but you don't know how the lottery is going to fall, who's going to be there. That's a team that I think would love to move into the top 4. I don't know what assets they'd trade to get there. Their only player that I feel like is untouchable and truly untouchable is DeJounte Murray. And I think you want to build around what his strengths are, and you could go get yourself a shooter. And so I have Benedict Mathurin and falling to the Spurs in a mock. And if that were to happen, then great. If Jakob Poeltl is going to be traded, then Jalen Duren, some of you want at 9, but you just don't know who's going to fall. So I think if the Spurs were to move up 2 or 3 picks, and maybe they could be another potential trade destination with the Blazers, they could maybe Keldon Johnson, someone like that. I don't know if they would do that necessarily for 2 picks up, but I think they're a team that I would like to move up and try to find a defined talent to play alongside of DeJounte Murray, who's the core of their franchise moving forward.
Yeah, it makes sense. I spoke to a scout. I feel like I've just been speaking to scouts, NBA personnel so much over the last week. And one of his comments was he has no idea what direction the Spurs are going in. I feel like they have a lot of different wings, a lot of redundancy, and then you're adding on 3 first-round picks. It's very confusing and interesting to see what the moves are for San Antonio. I can't think of a really good trades where they're going to get a lot of value, because it seems like everyone on their team outside of Murray is, and maybe Primo. I mean, I think Primo could be untouchable just because of his upside, but it just seems
that's
like
a good point.
I mean, they're not Orlando level when it comes to redundancy, but they just have a lot of, too many wings, and I mean, their roster is just totally not balanced. I mean, Doug McDermott was playing a lot of minutes at the 4 this year for them. So I think they're going to address front court needs with at least 2 of their first 3 picks if they keep them. Well, all right, man. Thanks a lot for coming on. I really enjoyed talking about hypothetical trades here. So thank you, the listeners, for making the NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NBA Podcast. From the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals, the Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. Once again, I am Rafael Barlowe. He is Leif Thulin, a.k.a. The Grinder, a.k.a. the voice of the Ogden Raptors. Get that correct?
You sure did.
And I think he's going to be the voice of an NBA team in the very near future. So remember where you first heard him at, right here on the NBA Big Board Podcast. And we are out.